Anybody else?
Yeah, we just like, I mean, look, it seems like it was forever. I just kept hearing, oh,
Okay. Greg is not going to be able to join us. He's a little under the weather. So we'll go ahead and start the meeting, and I'll call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mayor Miller.
Here.
Dews.
here.
Cobb. Here. Hurst.
Here.
Horn.
Here.
Nick. And Tracy's absent.
Well, I had hoped that Mr. Sarver would be here. I texted him earlier to talk about his project first. I guess we'll move on down the agenda and hopefully that he will show up later. The next item, number 4, was simply I was going to suggest, based on the usage of the public parking that the village owns, that we might consider starting to look for additional parking close to the downtown area. I think it would make sense to let some of the local realtors know that if a parcel becomes available, or a house, it's an older house, smaller lot close to the downtown, at least let us know, and whether or not it would make sense for us to acquire it to make some additional parking available. Does that make sense? Do they have any questions? And obviously we wouldn't have to pull the trigger unless it was the right price in the right place. But I'd like to pursue that unless the council disagrees. I see a lot of...
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I will continue with that. Next item is recycling with Mr. Herrick.
We talked a little bit, opened up the door for kind of some discussion at the last meeting. So we worked out some numbers just to give you an idea of what we're...
This is kind of right now. You want that out?
Oh, yeah, it's not that much. It's just a doodle.
Yeah, it could be an important doodle.
Ms. Craft, would you mind coming on down before instead on the dais? Would that be all right? Okay, thanks. All right, go ahead, Mr. Harris.
Okay, so just the options that we were discussing were option 1, no change. The 2 recycling dumpsters dumped a couple times a week there at the service complex. We have a line item of $55,000 for, we're estimating up to $55,000 for 2022. Of course, that number is, I believe, high just in case we have, you know, who knows, a full year we could have an extra, you know, some extra dumps, things like that. So up to $55,000. Option number 2, as far as the operating costs, would be the city having the hook lift truck and the 4 containers out there instead of 2. We estimated tipping fees at $4,000, and that's on the tonnage that we've used up to this year, and then we added another, I think 40% to that, 30%, and it's only $25 a ton to dump, which is actually really good. Vehicle maintenance $2,000, insurance $2,000. We figured $5,000 for fuel. Again, I think some of these, the $5,000 for fuel is, I'd say, worst case, because we won't be dumping as often with the extra containers, which is kind of the idea. No additional debt payment, and so the operational cost for that option would be $13,000. And then option number 3, operating costs, would be the employee $80,000. That's with all the benefits and everything, not the salary. So tipping fees, we estimated $9,000 because obviously if we did curbside, there's going to be a lot more. There's going to be more material. Vehicle maintenance $2,000 for the additional truck. Insurance $4,000, mainly because it's a big debris type trash truck and not a smaller truck. Fuel $30,000. Annual debt payment for the additional truck, $50,000. So we'd be looking at total operating costs for that option would be, these numbers are estimates, so check, 1, 2, 3, estimates, these are estimates. I'm just making sure, when you come back and say, you said that was going to be, that isn't it? Anyway, now we got there. Geez, you're a tough crowd tonight. Wow. Okay, so option 2, option 1 is pretty self-explanatory. We don't do anything, we just have them, business as usual with Rumpke. Option 2, equipment costs. The hook truck would actually be the shared truck. Well, if you recall, in the budget this year, we're purchasing another single axle dump truck. So if the refuse share of that truck would be $42,000, which is the 168. The price went up on the truck for the simple fact that it'll be a hook truck, but we'll also get a V-box salt spreader with that, stainless steel for sure, and then a plow on the front. So you add those, that's the additional equipment and mounting costs. 4 20-yard containers would be $48,508. Total equipment cost for option 2 would be $90,508. The grant for the containers would be $36,381. In other words, 75% of the container cost. The hook plow truck, $42,000. Containers, $12,000. So all in on the equipment cost for option 2 would be $54,127. The reason why we wouldn't do the truck is because we cannot purchase, we can't even put in an order for the truck until after when the grant's been accepted, which would be early July of 22. I called around a little bit again today, and they're still telling me 12 to 14 months to build. Again, I say that with caution because you never know what could come up. So there could be something out there that's a demo or something that just has, a couple thousand miles on it. So, but if we were to order today, because of everything that's going on, they're talking 12 to 14 months. So that's pretty much that. Any questions on that option?
So the truck, is that little voltage standard container, you're going to use it to solve it? Like what Rumpke comes against the container?
Actually, so it has the hook lift on it, so it pulls up the containers and secures them in place.
Yeah.
So what you do is you just set the container down, back over to a V-box salt spreader, and it pulls the spreader right on. It pulls the whole box up on the truck. I was going to print some pictures today, and I forgot.
It seems like a really long rig to be solid on one side.
Yeah, it actually, the spreaders, the spreader lengths, they make particular spreader lengths for hook lift trucks. So it's literally like, once you pull it up, the solder and back components are hanging down. You can level that however you want it, but they're actually right behind the truck, so, yeah. And the plow would be a 10-foot, just like our other 2 dump trucks. Any other questions?
So if you go with number 2, you got the $13,000 operating costs plus the equipment costs. So you could be all in budgeted at 67. Looking at this right?
Yeah,
correct?
support, yeah, just for the refuse share. And that's why I wrote it on here, because it's,
Well, that makes sense.
yeah.
Plus it's the number's 54 on the option 2, isn't it? At the bottom?
Oh, yeah, total equipment cost, I'm sorry, 54,127.
That's just equipment. You got to add to that the operational costs
Yeah.
as well.
The 13,000.
For the total,
Okay, that's the option.
I'm trying to compare it to option 1 where we're at 55,
Gotcha.
Right.
for the whole program.
Yeah.
So option 2 would make the whole program, if you will, 67.
Yes.
So for basically, $12,000, you can own all the,
Right.
and have it in-house and control all the dumping.
Yeah.
This seems like a good option to me.
And nobody is, we're not relying on somebody else setting the rates.
Right.
For
Exactly. Yep. I think it's a good option to pursue, so.
Option 3, that'd be, read you off the operational costs. The equipment cost would be the refuse truck. Right now, that price is $289,881. I'm sure that'll probably go up a little bit between now and again, this will be a while to get. It's just the same with all the vehicles right now. So the recycling toters would be $132,360. So the total equipment cost would be $422,241. The grant, if I submitted for a grant for that, it's possible to get 75% of the truck, or about $200,000. The way the grant is split is it's like you can apply for $100,000 for a truck and $100,000 for the toters, or if you're looking at like a curbside, then you can apply for all $200,000 for the truck. So that's why that number is different. I called them just to verify that because it was a little. I did a webinar and they didn't answer. I sent them a question, they didn't answer, so I called them just to make sure. Refuse truck balance after that, $89,881. Recycling toters, $132,360. Total village equipment cost, $222,241. So let's see. So option 2 is based on purchasing a multi-use plow truck, which will be split between street, refuse, water, and sewer. If not purchasing a shared truck, the village cost would be $155,127. Which would require financing and could add $35,000 to the annual cost estimate. If using a multi-use truck, which is shared, financing would not be required. On option number 3 is based on purchasing a refuse truck and recycling toters. The equipment cost to the village could be $222,241, which will require financing and would add the annual cost estimate. So this is based on, customer cost is based on 2022 data. The per month charge does not reflect future personnel increase or increase in customer base due to development. We calculated this the same way we did the original trash at 1,800 customers for around $556 a month. Again, that's just it's not a sure number. It's just. I'm just saying that since if we weren't buying a truck this year, it would be probably a different deal. But to put in the third truck we need in our fleet and control our own recycling, at least for a while, would be my recommendation for what that's worth.
Do we already have the grant?
I have to apply for it, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this tonight,
Because
is I
if we
want
don't
to
get
get
it, then obviously it goes way up.
right.
So you think we have a pretty good chance?
I think we got a really good chance at getting it for the containers.
Yeah.
For sure. I think we've got a very good chance. They had past recipients on there, and I called a couple of them, and they gave me some tips on if you're just going for this or for that, how to write it a little bit better, what they're looking for, that kind of thing. So I think it's a pretty good chance.
I really like the idea of not being reliant on another company coming in next year and saying, hey, we're going to increase your rate by X, and then kind of stuff.
Are we still having them dump twice a week?
So they dump one container on Friday and both containers on Tuesday.
And that seems to be efficient.
Most of the time, but I've checked it on Mondays. Sometimes it's full Monday morning. It's really hard. And people, I double checked on this with Dustin again. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but he has 0 contamination violations for us. So our recycling has been super clean, and which is important. So we basically, I didn't really take this into account, but really for the $55,000, that would probably include if we added another dump, I'm assuming, but because I think we should probably add another dump.
That would guess that the recycling will go up during the holidays.
Yeah. And if we had support of our own, we could manage that a lot better than.
Much easier for us to manage.
Would they still all be in the same spot?
Yeah. And we added some more lighting. I know an electrician. We added like a big LED light, it's kind of dark on the back end, so it's a lot brighter through there and it's a lot safer through there. And so we're still planning on putting a pad in, probably when the weather breaks. Put a nice big concrete pad there.
It's
so.
nice because it's safe and it's not muddy and grassy.
Yeah, it's a lot safer for people.
I don't know if it was you or Joey brought up the fact that we could use those on other days too. So put a dumpster downtown for the 4th of July or something.
Yep. And that could be another piece that we could look at purchasing for that truck. Besides the plow and the plower would be an actual, just a box that you could haul any kind of spoils with. It'd be a dumpster with an open gate, and you could just set it for an event, fill it up, and haul it. So, yeah. And it'd have an open top, so when you throw a box on it, it isn't just up there, like some people do. There's always a box on top of there. Any other questions on this? Okay. I just ask, however you guys want to talk about it, discuss, and then as soon as I get a direction, I'll get it done on the grant.
I think everybody's kind of in favor of that option.
Yeah.
Is it consensus, or you want to bring that to the regular?
I mean, I'm going to
You're good.
All right, got a consensus, move forward with option 2.
I'll give them the best story I can. Where's the floor, little fool?
I'm sure you will. All right, in your packet that's at your place, the next item should deal with the Ohio Attorney General Debt Collection Program. A column of annual construction cost, which is what our new ordinance bases its fee on, and the different levels of 1.5, 2, 2.5, and 3. I started at $500,000 because the 37 homes, now there were 40 sold in the first phase of Ryan Homes, but 3 have been refunded. So the $5,160,045 is the total construction cost of those 37 homes. And you can see the revenue that's generated at the different levels. How much additional development will take place? I do have an estimate from the developer. He estimates that in 2022, there'll be between 50 and 60 additional Ryan homes constructed. That the Randall Residence Assisted Living would be approximately 80 units. The Randall Residence Independent Villas would be between 20 and 30. And the Marketplace Express and the Retail Center would both begin construction in 2022. I do not have anything other than guesses on the construction costs for those projects. The only other piece I would add, and please ask any questions that you might have, is that just to give you, and I have the actual, we keep a spreadsheet of each permit and the cost, and we base it on what Ryan Homes tells us, as well as the tap fees that were collected. Just to give you one example of the, I'm sorry, I left out perhaps the most important part. These fees will go into 4 areas. It will go to support the new planning department, the water capital fund, the sewer capital fund, and the street repaving fund. And how it's divided between those 4, of course, council will decide. But that's where these fees. So this is our effort to put into practice that the growth pays for itself. And clearly, some of this infrastructure, for example, our wastewater treatment plant, will benefit our current residents as well as the new residents. But based on the initial evaluation, it's going to need to be replaced. That's in the millions of dollars. So really, I'm aware of 3 areas where we can raise revenue. I've got a rate study that will be probably completed by the end of the year. I guarantee you they'll recommend raising the sewer and water rates. And I understand the rates are already fairly high as compared to other homes or other municipalities in the region. I would expect to increase the tap fees. Now, those only impact new customers. buying into the system. And this is the third piece, percentage on the construction cost of any new construction. So this gives you some idea of the revenue that it might raise. Obviously, we're not going to make a decision, but so I mentioned the wastewater treatment plant. As you recall, we applied for a grant for a new water line under the river. That's estimated $800,000. We asked for a 50% grant, so we have a match of about $400,000. So, depending on what we decide in terms of a fee, you can see there'll be far more.
No, go ahead. We probably have the same question.
Yeah. We don't want to discourage any productivity or new businesses coming, right?
Correct.
So I think that's what, I want to talk about that, you know, we want people to come here, we don't want them to build and do things in Troy. So I think I don't know.
I can tell you, I've discussed it with Abby, because the ordinance wasn't complete,
Yeah,
and their estimated cost was $500,000, so that meant their fee was $75,000.
yeah.
So I called the president of Abby, explained that we were in the process of updating the ordinance. It wasn't in place yet, but we would like to collect that if he was comfortable with it. He didn't blink, he said, sure.
And I get that, but they're a big business, like I'm thinking, you know, maybe littler maybe businesses, or it's more of a risk. I don't know, I just thought maybe some discussion on it.
Oh, absolutely, there should be discussion.
Yeah.
My response to any project that comes to us, I would say has to be negotiated. And depending on who's applying, what they're doing. Normally, the criteria you look in terms of economic development is the number of jobs it's creating, the amount of tax revenue it generates, and typically property tax. Again, I'm coming from two states where property tax was the primary revenue source for the municipality. With it being an income tax, that's a little bit different. But I would expect any development that's going to take place in downtown, we want to incentivize. We want that to happen. New projects in the downtown would be a high priority. So I would expect that any project that we really want, we would sit down and negotiate with them. The problem becomes if we try to change a policy for the entire village based on one project. I think that's a problem. I think we need to pass the policy, and then any project that comes to us, you're going to sit down and talk with them. Is it possible that a project would consider here and not build because of this? It is. But at that point, you're saying, we want the growth, but the growth has to be for people who really want to be here. And we think it's worth West Milton. So they're coming here for the schools. This is what it costs to, build in West Milton. Is it possible we reconsider this in the future? Sure, any public policy, if circumstances change. The question then becomes how you replace that revenue, how you implement paying for that growth.
So almost like a business is, well, variance isn't the right word, right? Like when you're kind of, or is it?
No,
It would be asking.
it's negotiating.
Negotiating.
Any project that's interested in West Milton, I would suggest, needs to sit down with staff and get as much information. How much is it going to cost? What are you investing? What's your construction cost? How many employees are you going to have? What kind of business is it? And all those criteria would be weighed, and then it's brought to you to say, here's what they want to do, staff recommends X. Because the key is, what are we going to have to do to get this project here? All right? And the downtown is a special area. I think the downtown might be considered to be treated differently, but that's a decision you would have to make. Because as soon as you don't make somebody pay it, everybody from there on is going to say, oh, wait a minute, they didn't pay, why do I have to pay? But that's just the reality. So
you're saying you could take like the downtown economic development zone or
you
whatever,
could,
something along those lines?
right. Without the law director here, I'm sorry. Without the law director, I hesitate to make any statements on what the law allows. But in general, you could define and set a different fee for the downtown or different other conditions for the downtown. But ideally, I think you could make up with other incentives to a project and leave that in place so that you offset for a project downtown because you want it downtown.
There is, I was trying to remember what it was called, and I'll have to look it up, but it's like an corporation or something that the state is. It's a kind of like, if I read it correctly, and I'll let you, you're the expert, but it was similar to like a TIF. So
Passive is one we can offer.
and it is, so like if you're trying to keep stuff alive in a downtown area, that's what it's for. And that's one thing. Can I let me think, correct me if I'm not thinking of this correctly, but if we begin to generate this kind of revenue, that would allow us to offset so that then we could incentivize through other mediums.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So then instead of us, if this is going to, say, the water tap and the sewer tap, and that's kind of helping offset some of that, that's not going to be coming out of the general fund, where then we can say, we're going to create a reinvestment corporation or something, or the CRA, or something along those lines, but a different mechanism that could help offset some of those. So if somebody wants to build on to a building, or if somebody wants to revamp a building downtown, or do a brand new facade or something, sure. Rebuild an opera house.
Those 4 areas are my suggestion. They're not etched in stone. The money can go where you decide. You could add an economic development fund where you do low interest loans or forgivable loans if they do certain projects. There was a comment in the back. Mr. Dorman?
I just wanted to ask, when you talk about those extra fees, how do you balance that, asking people to put skin in the game and an investment in our community, and then balance that with the idea of development using TIF money, which is other people's skin in the game? And the biggest developments we have going on right now, we really had to do a lot of courting to get them to come to the dance, I guess is what I'm saying.
Sure.
And how do you balance those two things? We're asking other people to put skin in the game, but then the biggest thing we got going on right now, the skin in the game, is collectively us, because that is to a certain extent. I understand what a TIF is. Not everybody does, and it's a hard thing to wrap your head around. That land wouldn't be generating any money towards the school system the way it's at.
Right.
Now it's looking, 15 years down the road, that's a boom for the school. That's generations of money. But when you apply it at large scale, how do you balance those two thought processes?
I would suggest it's on a project-by-project basis. You have to look at each project individually. TIF is a great incentive that can be used. But my suggestion was this revenue, there will be no shortfall of places where this revenue will be needed, or some revenue will be needed. And so...
well, there's definitely no shortfall of needs for that.
I have, and you may have missed this, I sat down with Mr. Kaufman, and we discussed this. And it was kind of interesting because his response was, well, I had suggested to your predecessor you needed to update all your fees before my project started anyway, and apparently that never happened. So I ran the numbers for him, and his conclusion was this: if your sewer and water infrastructure doesn't work, if people buying my houses can't flush the toilets, they won't buy it. So do I like it? I'm okay with it, as long as that's where the money's going. Not everyone may see it that way, and that's why I say you have to look at it, I think, on a project-by-project basis.
Again, though, it's like when you said 500,000, you said it'd be 75,000 for the fee, and I know you misplaced that decimal point, because it'd only be 7,500.
Well, did I say 75,000?
Yeah, because you were-
7,500. I'm sorry. Well, thank you for correcting me. 7,500.
Yeah.
Which is a much, 7,500, you're spending $500,000, that's almost a rounding error.
Didn't blink. Yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke.
No, because I got shocked over there.
No.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, 1.5%. Other questions or comments?
I was just going to say, as I thought about what you're bringing up, people that want to locate here, business or residential, build either way, they got to already have a desire to come. And I think there's a premium to that. And we want responsible growth. and sustainable. And so part of the way that can happen is by having a fee. And do you discourage 1 out of 10? I don't know if that's right, but I'm just saying, do you discourage a few? Maybe. But the ones that do come want to be here, and they prove it by, you know, whatever this percentage ends up being, you know, they put the skin in the game that Mr. Norman was talking about, and they say, look, I'm here, and this is what we, you know, we want to be part of this community, you know, and to Scott's point, I was thinking the same thing. If you're, you know, you talked about maybe as much as $50 million in construction costs next year, you know, or something like that. It's a small part. When you really put it down, even the average homeowner, if they're buying a $200,000 house, you know, that $4,000 building fee, you know, is very small by comparison.
And remember, it's not the sale price, it's the construction.
Right, construction costs.
And for the most part, we've so far taken people at their word.
Right.
Is it possible we would ask an applicant to give documentation? I think it is.
Sure.
It would be reasonable and to be fair.
Yeah.
But there's a big difference between construction cost and sale price.
Yes. I think one thing we're going to run into some difficulty is on residents outside of new developments and new construction that want to renovate their home, add on, put a fence up, put a deck up, because it'll be a different process. Still, the fee is small, but it'll be more than what it was. It'll be more than their neighbor paid, or whatever the case may be. So, and that's not insignificant because, you know, it'll affect their lives, you know, or ours if we do any of those projects.
Sure.
Kind of things. I mean, I think the overall benefit is obvious and one that we have to accept the risk of driving some, maybe disincentivizing some people in order to get the right balance for the future. So it's kind of my 2 cents on it.
And my fence would cost me $150 instead of the 20.
Right.
But I mean, if I didn't know it was 150, I'm not going to pay not to my fence because of $150.
I need that permit for my fence.
I'm sorry, I love that application. Any other questions, comment? Again, this is just for your information. Please look over it. If you need more information, it'll come up for second reading in December.
So we already read it at 1.5. So if we don't adjust it at all, it'll stay at 1.5.
If you don't adjust it, but you're allowed to make changes between the first reading and the final reading.
Right. I was thinking about it before we came in, adjusting it up from the 1.5 already before you presented these numbers. Just to get it into the 2 to 3 range is what I was thinking of, you know, 2.5. I don't know what everybody else thinks about that. If we think it's enough, you know, a shock or enough of a difference, you know, now would be the time to talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. You know, right now, it's going to generate quite a bit because we got a lot of building in the next couple of years. But if that slows down, then that's when that may drop off pretty significantly.
Yeah.
So, being at that point, do we, if we, let me say this correctly, if we increased it now, we would be ahead of that, but we could also increase it in the future. Right. So,
One way to look at it is if you put something like this in place, and the growth continues beyond the 2 projects, one that's approved, one that's proposed, and we committed to smart growth, to managed growth. If the growth starts to get beyond what we believe our infrastructure has the capacity to handle, you start bumping it up. And it's a way to throttle down if there's more than what we believe we're comfortable with. And I think that's a better approach than simply turning people down. Yes, sir.
This may be totally off, but
Go for it.
I mean, can you phase it in for different things? Can you literally start new construction at 2% and say any current or existing add-ons rolls in the first year 0.5%, the next year 1%, year after that 1.5%.
You can do anything you want.
And then you can get all the people that are on the fence on putting that room addition on, gives them a year or two to crap or get off the pot, so to speak, and the people that are going to finance it all right into their construction loan that aren't really going to bat an eye at it, you know, that they're not going to, it's not going to change their decision-making process when you're putting up a $250,000, $300,000 house. You've got that much built into bathroom fixtures. But you know, the guy that's deciding to make a different investment that's got to write that check and not put it on a loan, you know, might give them a different option.
I think that's a good point, and certainly we have some flexibility to how, simple's better. You can make it more complicated. What I would simply say is, for every dollar of revenue that you don't generate in this, you're going to have to make it up in raising the rates and other sources. And those aren't going to be popular either. So, it's the fact of life that raising the fees and charging people don't like. So the question is, do you want to do it here, or you want to add a few percentage points on the sewer and water rates, or something else, some other way of charging the fee? But I'm not aware of any other good options in the last couple of months of trying to put this together. Yes, we can craft it however the council and the community wishes. The question is, the changes you make, I'm assuming, reduce the amount of revenue you generate, and that kind of offsets what you're trying to accomplish. So if you do nothing, it costs you nothing. But if you build on a room, you're adding to the value of your house, you're growing, you're going to pay. And believe me, I'd be the one trying to explain to folks who are unhappy when they find out how much it costs. It'd be nice to be a lot easier, but it didn't cost very much. That same token, then I'm going to say, well, how are we going to pay for this water line, or the wastewater treatment plant, or all these other pieces?
And they're gonna say, well, why do I have to pay for it? Like, that's
Because
the first part.
Because you're going to use wastewater treatment.
Yeah, but why just me? Why are you
Everybody's paying.
punishing me because I'm putting on addition? I'm just thinking
No,
like.
no,
Because growth is growth.
Growth is growth. That's
If
exactly
you're adding
right.
on an addition with a half bath, I mean, that growth should be the same,
Yeah, that's going to be contributing.
or something.
I have a question. In other words, the people in the town, they're saying, you want to put a roof on your house and it's $20,000. So you want them to pay 1.5%.
Right now, you don't require it for a meter.
You're not required, but you,
Right now, the ordinance doesn't require. Could we add that?
yeah, nothing
Sure.
does it right now. That's what I'm saying.
So that would be included.
So it's any additional square footage, right?
It's square footage. The ordinance is far from clear, but in general, it's construction, but it doesn't include roofs. Sheds, fences, garages, additions. You can do almost anything on the interior, and there's not a permit required. So it's primarily exterior. Square footage is one, but it's not the only. So this is trying to make the ordinance better. It's not perfect. It's not probably where it should be.
Well, that's what I wonder, because
No,
you keep talking and
does
you
that make
say-
sense?
Yeah, it has to be then square footage. That's different than putting a roof on.
Sure. And right now, there's no permit required for a roof, so that's not going to hit. But if you want to build a shed, or you want to put a fence, that's required.
Yeah, I would totally disagree if someone wants to renovate something, that we have like to pay. But I think that's.
We can change.
Like I just,
I would
porch
too.
floor, if I had to pay 1.5%
Yeah.
just to make my house look better on the outside.
Yeah.
I didn't have
If you did what?
Yeah, that's.
Like,
Renovate.
like exterior renovation. If I put signs.
There's a renovation going on J Street
Yeah, that's
right,
what I'm saying, like I would
or
not want to discourage.
Main Street right
Yeah,
now.
Siding on your house is
Yeah.
not currently covered under the
Yeah, yeah.
ordinance, so that's not something you're going to pay in fee on.
Well, there is a new construction, not new construction, a renovation going on Main Street. And things like that, I think, add value to the community when you're upgrading an old house that might otherwise, might be torn down or whatever.
The project you're talking about, I don't believe it's been a permit pulled on it, so perhaps it doesn't, it's not covered.
Yeah, so I don't know whether they pulled a permit or not, but I'm just saying, if you're looking to discourage some growth because, you know, he got to pay a price to be in this community. It just seems a little detrimental.
I tried to discourage growth. We're trying to have growth pay for itself. There's a difference.
It sounded like a little bit of discussion of discouraging. If you want to live here, you got to pay to live here.
It's possible that the program could be used to do that. That's not the intent. It's not at this point.
Well, I think serious thought ought to be given to the
That's what
intent.
you're doing now.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
That's why I voiced
I
mine.
mean, I'm more comfortable with the lower rate. And then also possible discussion if, you know, business is coming in and want, you know, just.
I think regardless of the rate,
Yeah.
every project needs to be thought out, needs to be discussed. What kind of investment, what kind of project, what are you building, where are you building it? Those kinds of things that staff should bring to negotiate a deal. Whatever the council decides, I will be fine. I just want you to see, based on your decision, how much revenue you think it will generate and how close that will come to meeting the gap that we're going to have on the infrastructure improvements that we require. That's all.
I just feel there's room for negotiation, and just even people are gonna push it to the ultimate limit, like, well, if I can negotiate this, then I'm gonna keep negotiating until I get what I want, and the other guy might not know negotiation was possible, like Abby Credit Union.
Yeah, let me clarify. I would not expect negotiation on a residential project, but only on a commercial project. So you build your house, that's not negotiable. If you're building a drugstore or any kind of commercial property, that's something that if you want to request some incentive, that's where you sit down and talk about how much you're going to invest in the project, how many jobs it will create, and so on.
Somebody wants to, like a commercial building downtown that will just breathe life into it, right? Then we can find a different method to negotiate that. That would be what you're talking about.
I would expect that the village would do anything to encourage new development, new construction in the downtown. That's the heart of the village, and I would think we would do whatever possible
But
to encourage that.
it could still be a 3% or 1.5%, whatever revenue stream into these accounts, whereas it could be offset in a way that's advantageous to us, but you're still getting part of whatever that business is paying in this fee going into the street paving fund, so we have more money to pave streets wherever else in town.
Somebody wants to build a building with 20 full-time jobs in it, then we have that revenue coming in, but we can offset the cost of permit fees by saying, okay, 0% loan, or, you know, whatever.
But it's still a revenue stream for those critical areas that we really need it right now.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, I'd also say it'd be advantageous to make it more than 3.5%.
Well, I would agree if it wasn't for like, you know, everyday people going, I need to put up a fence or a shed or something like that, and then getting hit with it also. I mean, it's like if you're a commercial business and you're coming in and you're putting something up, normally you have, you know, you thought all this out and you probably padded your stuff for the fees and unforeseen stuff, so not a big deal, but, you know, if I'm scraping together enough to get up a fence and then, you know, all of a sudden, oops, now it's $300, $500.
I would suggest simpler is better, but if you'd like to make it a graduated scale, so for the first 10,000 of a project, that's the smaller stuff, it's 1.5. Over that, it bumps up.
I like that.
Yeah.
Graduate.
There we go, because that'll cover a lot of,
I just threw that number out.
Yeah, that's a good
5,000 or
idea.
10,000, whatever, it's 1.5%.
right?
And then over that, then you're gonna get people, my project's $9,999. Let me see the receipt.
Yeah.
Again, you're gonna, the more complicated it is, the more challenging it'll be to enforce it and make it work. Does that mean we don't do it that way? No, it just means I want you to understand that when somebody says, my project came in at 10,000, whatever, okay, that's what the fee is.
I think the majority of the growth he's worried about that might get discouraged will be under that 10,000.
Very possible.
I think.
There doesn't need to be a public hearing because they're not gonna take one of your licenses. I said, what? How did we get this far into it? You just now figured that out. And I talked to 3 different people and none of them sounded like I had confidence in what they were telling me. So I said, well, you gotta send me something in writing. I want confirmation. I still don't have it. But their explanation was, there's not gonna be a public hearing because you don't need one. They're taking a license from Covington to Covington. And I said, then where did West Milton come into this? Well, we don't know. Well, wait a minute. So I just wanted to update you because we put that request in October. I've never heard anything back. So I got a hold of somebody, but I really didn't get a satisfactory answer. So if I get some documentation, I'll let you know. But that's the latest word from the Liquor Control Board on that issue. Appointment to the Tax Incentive Review Council. You should have in your packet a copy of the resolution that was passed in the past, and an explanation of the Ohio Revised Code. What it comes down to is we need to appoint 3 persons. In the past, it was the village manager and I believe the mayor and 1 other person. Take a look at that. We'll have a resolution to take action. We'll just need to fill in the names. If you're comfortable with the mayor and myself, and then the only issue might be if the 3rd person has any involvement with development, they would have to recuse themselves, and whether or not that'd be an issue. That'd be the only reason that I might give pause to reappointing the person who was on there before. But basically, you give us the 3 names, they'll be appointed. They will be the ones that will make the decisions on tax abatements, as I understand. That's this process is very different in Ohio than what I'm used to. So this council is new territory. So this is just to give you a heads up. I need 3 names to put on that council. Questions? And I apologize for the length of this agenda. I know it's long, but I'm doing my best. I promise.
Nothing.
This is nothing? Oh, yeah. I think that's a challenge.
But he generally wasn't dealing with something to read everything back.
Hey, Tim, Mr.